it's pinned up. But yeah, Microsoft confirms new exchange 0 days are used in attacks.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Tyler.
You're welcome.
Excellent. No, so the Microsoft Exchange exploit. So think about this way back when, January of last year. An attacker had gone in and actually compromised the source code of Exchange. So the end game on this usually ends up, when you have somebody's source code, you can find these 0 days all day long. And what they'll do is they'll come out with one at a time. So depending on what's changed, and they'll focus on the next 0 day because you can do what's called the bin diff. So basically, you're taking those binaries and comparing what's changed to see, and then look at the source code again and say, let me find a new one. And then the reason why they make them public, sort of like that, is so it's more like crowdsourcing it. And as you have more people trying to attack it, guess what? True attribution is a lot harder.
Okay. Well, thank you for the additional context here. The next big story from Bloomberg, Apple's VP of procurement is leaving, sources say, after joking in a viral September 5th TikTok video that he fondles big-breasted women for a living. And that might have something to do with him departing Apple. One of Apple's most senior executives is leaving after he turned up in a viral video on TikTok making inappropriate comments.
Well,
Okay.
Tyler, speaking about TikTok, there was also another interesting thing that happened that nobody really even talked about. So the US CISO of TikTok, Roland, who came from ADP, had also left this month. So it makes me wonder what's really brewing on the back end.
Interesting. Yeah,
So,
people.
so Tom, I mean, this Microsoft thing, shouldn't this be like a bigger issue that, being that every corporation uses this, that we should be hearing about this more on like like the nightly news? I mean, you would think that something like that would be like a really big problem, or maybe not, or
Yeah, well, you have to remember the reporters don't see it as the big news. It also depends on who their sponsors are. That's also another thing. Like Log4j, which came out December 7th of last year, that literally impacted 64% of the products on the internet. And that never even made nightly news. Um, and that's a huge thing. So for the bigger businesses, they get abreast of it. The smaller business have no clue. The exchange stuff is interesting because everything, the reason why it's kept a little quiet, except in the tech community, is everything's hosted in GitHub. And GitHub has massive security issues that most people don't even realize because I call it developers gone wild. Meaning they spin them up, here it is. And then the other hacker attack vector, as you saw with the LastPass hack, was that 3 weeks ago now? They're targeting the developers. So wherever the developers are, they have the biggest impact. Now, what really gets scary is when I start following pattern of life of a developer and start doing commits on the normal timeline as them, because the best application security program in the world will not detect a backdoor in code.
Okay. All right. Next up, Google plans to shut down Stadia on January 18th of next year and will refund hardware, software, and DLC purchases. Members of the Stadia team will be reassigned. That's their gaming platform. Next, from Bloomberg, internal Palantir documents detail a plan to deepen its ties to the UK's NHS by buying up smaller rivals, helping avoid scrutiny and increase health data. Very clever. That's super clever. Next, from CoinDesk, Sub-Saharan Africa crypto usage is driven by everyday necessity. 80% of crypto payments in the region are under $1,000, obviously, the world's highest proportion. Yeah, crypto takes on a whole new use case in countries where trust is needed because that's what it provides fundamentally. Next, from The Verge, Twitter plans to add a TikTok-like full-screen video scrolling user interface, as I said, told you everyone would do like a few days ago. A TikTok full-screen video scrolling user interface for English-speaking users in iOS, and a video carousel tab on iOS and Android. So Twitter is joining the bandwagon of social media companies copying TikTok's everlasting scroll of videos. Yes, and you can't blame them. I believe even non-social networks will start doing this as well. Like Tinder will go from left and right to scrolling up and down because it's just changing. It's amazing how it took, one app took this vertical scrolling approach, and everyone else has had to go along. It's how the brain wants to do it fundamentally, and keeps people more engaged. The next is from The Guardian. In a closely watched case, a UK coroner rules that a 14-year-old died by suicide after consuming extensive self-harm material on Instagram and Pinterest. Inquest. Who's Inquest? Inquest told 14-year-old took her own life while suffering from depression and had interacted with harmful social media content. That was the Guardian headline. The TechCrunch headline says social media a factor in death of UK schoolgirl. Bloomberg headline says social media played a role in UK teens' death. BBC headline says social media a factor in teens' death. It's a lot of British coverage, actually. It's almost exclusively British coverage because it's a UK. It happened in the UK, and she was UK. It's terrible. Next, Bloomberg says Apple is moving just 10% of its production capacity out of China, where 98% of iPhones are made, and it would take around 8 years to move everything out at the current pace. Supply lines. Okay, so there you go. That's kind of the whole point.
Current pace, though, being the operative word. So I think the pace could definitely change. I think the fact that it's happening at all is surprising. So
I think as a first move, 10% makes a lot of sense. And then you test, and you do it in two places like they've done with Vietnam and India, and you see who can handle it, who does it better. Let them feel like they're competing with each other to get the other 90%, and let those two countries duke it out, and hopefully they both win.
sounds like an awesome version of Street Fighter.
Who can make iPhones? Next up from Bloomberg, they say they have sources that Mark Zuckerberg told staff in a weekly Q&A that Meta will freeze hiring, restructure some teams, and cut budgets across most teams, citing the economy. Yeah, I'm telling you that Mark Zuckerberg has some of the incredibly intelligent, some of the most capable financial minds at his disposal, and so do his biggest investors. And he and Evan from Snapchat also revealed some very similar sentiments in a recent interview. And these guys are not stupid. And they know that the world is on the edge of some truly thin ice. And they need to play defensive at this moment. That's the smart thing to do. And they don't want to appear desperate and lay lots of people off at the, they don't want to spook the market, but they need to really, really, take really, a strong defensive posture. And you're going to see a whole lot of this. Amazon's doing the same, not surprisingly. So Amazon, the next story is about Amazon. Amazon rolls out its QVC-style live stream service called Amazon Live for live shopping in India, running 15 per day, hosted by more than 150 creators from 10 a.m. to 1 a.m., covering electronics and more. Amazon have launched a QVC style live stream. I love how TechCrunch has to reference QVC as a metaphor for what is really a Pinduoduo style live streaming shopping. What Amazon's doing has nothing to do with QVC. It's just that Americans and the TechCrunch's audience don't know what Pinduoduo is. And that's what they're copying, is the live streaming coming out of Asia. And I think they're smart to do it in India, which is probably more ready for this than the US is. And yeah, this is inevitable, as you've heard me rant endlessly a year ago. It's just, it
Tyler.
is, yes, it's taking more time than it should for various reasons. One of them being that the data game that Facebook used to take advantage of is no longer available because Apple's hoarding the data and they're not allowing for the wholesale, vacuuming up of data as they used to do before iOS 14.5, and that put a bit of a damper on the excitement around live shopping, as it's called, or social commerce. So, anywho, but they're going to party. They're going to continue on because it's still such a tremendous opportunity. Sorry to whoever I cut off.
That was me. I just wanted to say the timing is perfect because we are in the fifth day of our new festive season. And this festive season starts from now and will go on until Christmas. So there's marriage season, there's Diwali coming up, there are other festivals, and everybody's on a shopping spree. So the timing is perfect for Amazon to launch this in India this time.
I feel like this is one of those ideas that was born in the East or seems to be coming from the East, and I think like America specifically is going to be the last one to the party, kind of like was the case with Gangnam Style and a few of the other things. But it's inevitable. It's like the internet of ShamWow. That's what it feels like, except live. So
Well,
very exciting.
you touched on an interesting point, which is, and so does TechCrunch. This is not a completely original idea to people in the West. We had live TV shopping, which Asia did not have. So to Asia, there's an excitement and a novelty to this, where from the American or Western perspective, there's a creepiness and what's the word I'm looking for? Cheesiness and campiness or kitschiness, or kind of slightly stigmatized vibe to this QVC style approach to selling stuff, because it turned out that a lot of that QVC stuff was crap. And so people who bought that stuff at 3 a.m. on TV, and I remember buying a watch off of that when I was 10 years old, and the watch came and it was a piece of shit, and it fell apart in a day. So I think that has left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths around this style of buying things from a live stream video, that the East didn't never, had that negative previous experience. And
There's a
so,
pretty good sketch on Adult Swim about the live ads. So if anyone wants to check that out for a laugh about what the '90s looked like when these things broke down on set and how the show host panicked and stuff, so it's kind of funny too.
Tyler, from what I've read, actually in China, they have this TV live selling as well. They started in 1992, but because there are too many complaints, some and so they this TV online commercial thing stopped around the 2009. So it seems like but at the same time, since the internet had boosted, so when the connection in China, you can think they always skipped some kind of uh, in the mid between commercials, like from VCD direct to Bluetooth, something like that. So after the TV sale thing stopped, I think like they because everybody has this smartphone around maybe after 2015. So like that's maybe in Chinese, of course, not every the TV is of course popular, but this kind of experience of online shopping, just like the social media, the Western Eastern have different culture on this as well. So in the Eastern world, I mean in Asia, actually I should say Asia, the intimacy, I don't know, I feel it's very different from how maybe Americans feels this. So the interaction, um it's different from the phone, because if you are using the TV to sell things, basically it's interact with the phone caller, and this kind of streaming commerce, it's it's more like you have a group of people interacted with each other, because all those messaging sometimes can have people talk together, and that where I would say increase your adrenaline somehow. And if you see people buy things and you follow the other thing, other people buy things like a group. So I'm not sure. I think this India experience and where experiment will be very interesting, because I still don't see like in Europe, they withdraw the TikTok withdraw their online streaming uh, commerce, they hold the project. So right now maybe there's another starting point to observe if it's gonna be a trend in this Western world as well.
Hey, Tyler, I just quickly want to make one or two points or something. I wouldn't necessarily not that I'm a great fan. I've never really bought anything off it, but I mean, I wouldn't diss QVC too much because they've been around for years.
Yeah.
They were, incredibly profitable company, and so somebody must have like something that they bought on it that wouldn't have lasted that long. But there's also a story, because we've been talking about TikTok and Twitter, about I think you see it because I think it's in the same feed you're looking at. I think it was above one of the stories you've already done of of uh Twitter adopting like TikTok like UI on at least on Apple devices. Do you see that one, or
Yeah.
I can go read it? Yeah.
Yeah. We just read it.
You read it? Okay, I'm
Yep.
sorry, I missed that. Yeah.
No worries.
And as far as the QVC is concerned, maybe the geriatric population that keeps on buying, forget what they bought and buy again. There could be many reasons for QVC to be still profitable. Not necessarily that means that the quality of products are good.
Okay. So going into the tweets, I just found a breaking tweet out of Kiev from a Kiev publication. It says, breaking, Ukraine officially applies for NATO membership. Now that gets really interesting. Oh, wow. What an interesting move. If Putin is going to try and annex Donbass, right, and claim, if you attack me, now you're attacking Russia, the appropriate reciprocation is to expedite Ukraine joining NATO and then say, your move, Putin. Now, when you attack fucking Ukraine, you're attacking NATO. Article 5, bitch. Checkmate. That would be hilarious if they speed rushed Ukrainian NATO membership in a weekend. Oh my God,
And
that would
and
be.
how do you think Turkey votes on that? By the way, yeah.
They just allowed Sweden and Norway, Sweden and Finland.
But it did take months. I mean, it took several months for them. Plus, there are requirements. I'm not sure. I think you have to have peaceful borders and internal peace for you to be approved for the security check. But I'm not sure if they can do some special case scenario for Ukraine, but that would be amazing if they do.
That would be amazing. Anyway, I'm
And that
fantastic.
would be, quite frankly, I think, very debatable. I mean, in the United States, because you're talking about at that point the precursor to a hot war between the United States and Russia. And we have in the United States, it's always controversial about how this gets implemented or not. Congress is supposed to declare war. We've had obviously undeclared wars, Vietnam and etc., and that's why we have something called now the Wars Power Act that I don't want to get too much into American foreign policy, but there would be a lot of debate in this country of effectively the United States ending up in a war with Russia that was undeclared by Congress because the administration um, approved NATO membership, for Ukraine. I mean, this is not going to be an uncontroversial issue even in the United States. It's a lot different than selling them arms.
Yeah. Okay.
Did you
So
guys look at the pictures of hundreds and thousands of trucks and people, like all the roads jammed in Russia, people trying to leave
Yes.
after this?
Yep. Okay.
also do realize if the U.S. were to get involved, so pretty much say the Five Eyes, the Five Eyes countries that are part of NATO, the first thing that'll happen is this will go full blown asymmetric. The first thing that'll be the first things launch will be a cyber war.
Yes, indeed. I agree with that.
However you look at it, though, Tyler, this is a very difficult situation for the whole world. I think the UN also seems to be hamstrung about the whole thing. But if Russia is allowed to get away with this kind of expansion of territory through a rather dubious kind of referendum system, um, anybody else can follow suit. And where does that leave um, sovereignty and nationhood and everything like that in the whole world? I think it's a very, very difficult situation for everybody. And sadly, it probably points to some level of violence and war.
Yeah. Okay. Um, Anyone else with a tweet that they found since we met last time? Saudamini found one from Microsoft. Microsoft survey says that hybrid work is creating a disconnect between employees. 93% of leaders in India say getting employees back to the office in person is a concern. The report finds that people are more likely to come in for each other. I got cut off in the middle of a sentence. To come in for each other than any other reason. 80% of employees in India say they need a better reason to go into the office besides company expectations. Yep. These young folks got a little taste of working from home, and they're not going to let that bone go without a fight. NASA and SpaceX to study possible
Tyler,
bio.
I was gonna
Yeah.
just real quick. I That is so true. I was commenting yesterday how in my office we all teams each other every morning. Hey, are you going in? I don't know. Are you going in? Hey, is Donna going in? Hey, if you guys are going in, I'm gonna go in there. All right, who's gonna make coffee? And we all we all work from home unless we've got a group of us going into the office. It's funny.
So Tyler, I also tweeted you another interesting one. So Brian Krebs came out with an interesting article yesterday.
Krebs on security.
Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of about a massive amount of fake CISO profiles on LinkedIn and how it's screwing up all the data collectors as to who the actual person in charge of security is.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so here we go with a bunch of good tweets. A medical supply drone takes off somewhere in Australia. By the sounds of the names of the city, I'm guessing it's Australia. And Google Fiber plans 100 gigabit per second broadband speed for customers. That's tremendous. Part of the access division of Alphabet is reportedly planning to offer not 1 gigabit per second, which is 1,000 megabytes per second. This is 100 gigabits per second. That is 100,000 megabytes per second. That is tremendous.
The other thing with Google Fiber, they've announced that they're rolling out now to other cities. They're supposed to get to Las Vegas, supposedly. Um, and in every municipality, you're going to have different issues because the local cable companies are going to fight it. You're going to have right of way issues and all of that. But a lot of people don't. I mean, depending on where you live. I mean, I remember when Google Fiber. I think it launched in Kansas City over a decade ago, and it's really great to have access to that. I don't have access. I'm waiting for them to come here because it gives you another choice between your cable company and your phone company with DSL, and probably at a better product. So so people should look for that in their communities in the United States if you don't have it already, because I think they're going to start adding a whole bunch of cities.
As if they didn't already have all your data. And
Well,
Elon,
I'm not. I mean, that's not even a concern. I mean, that's not even. I mean, I don't even consider that a concern. I would. I mean, I just think that a lot of people want more choice on just getting pure,
I,
high speed internet. Yeah.
I'm just being cheeky. I know. I'm not trying to
Okay.
dismiss your point.
Yeah.
The On a similar note, Elon tweeted out about how Starlink works during hurricanes, making reference to Florida and how people with Starlink, the maritime version of Starlink, works on very uh, turbulent oceans and during hurricanes and everything else, which is kind of an interesting point because power goes out. There was millions of people ran out of power, and when the power goes out, your internet goes out. Unless you're on a Starlink system with your own solar system. And then he also had two other interesting tweets, some very similar tweets, about the solar tiles on a roof withstood 155-mile-an-hour winds. He has photos of that. And he also has a Tesla Powerwall that was underwater for multiple hours, which stayed up during that. And people were confused about that. And then he made the point that submarines work on battery-powered engines underwater. He also said that the Cybertruck will operate as a part-time or short-term boat, that you can drive it even through ocean water for short distances, or for short-term times period. So,
Tyler, you spoke so much about this. Now the next room popping up on the clubhouse will be the conspiracy room that said Elon used HARP to control the weather to test out his Tesla products.
sure.
His tweets are already followed by many memes, but also by factual videos of Tesla driving almost like submerged underwater and driving really well in Florida storm. And the internet connection through the satellite with data showing the interruption were there for 3 seconds or less, even if there were any interruption, despite of torrential rain and extreme weather condition, wind and all of that. um, Perhaps, and the solar panel too, because a lot of people who live in Florida were kind of worried, or people were asking, how are you going to charge your car, or how are you going to go through the storm and there is no electricity. So people post a video of how their cars were still charged, battery functional, solar panel functional, internet ongoing, and kind of providing another alternate for people who live in hurricane stricken area, where all these services are interrupted after hurricane.
I think some of that, I thought some of that was in response to, there was a lot of tweets about Starlink not working, that there was all sorts of problems because there was no access.
I don't know about that.
At least I thought that's why he started tweeting, but then, yeah, I went crazy. The Cybertruck one was my favorite.
And there's another tweet. I'm not sure, Tyler, if you're done with this one.
Go ahead.
The AI days today in
Uh-huh.
Palo Alto. And then another tweet about men's health, the global data from the United Nations organizations showing the United States men's health at the bottom of the list in the most opulent countries. The reason being not having access to the insurance or full coverage, or just pure reluctance of males in America to seek help with healthcare that contributes to their poor health and outcome and mortality. So US is like 35% as opposed to other countries. I forgot the top one, which was more than 80%. They were more than 80% healthier than the men in the United States. So this is a kind of a concerning trend because the amount of money people make here, the healthcare is supposed to follow uh, that trend, and the health should be much better. Astonishing some of the countries that have better health in men. So I don't have the link with me right now. I'm walking, but very good study to look at, and also a point to ponder what we can do to improve our health and well-being and reduce mortality.
Well, it's like if you have the diets of kings and queens, you're going to die like kings and queens, and those people usually were overweight and had other issues like that. So historically, I think what we were all striving for is now a source of disease because nobody's talking about moderation, but I think we also live in a very sensitive society, so it's definitely a difficult topic to address.
Well, the difference is the rest of the countries, all other 9 countries that are ahead of United States, are also opulent nations. They make enough money, some of them more than United States, but the health conditions, the the healthcare system, and also just the willingness to seek health related interventions earlier is the difference. So, lack of health related education, a lack of awareness, a lot of the decision making issues, which are psychological and other factors that are contributing. It's not the money, because if that was true, then other countries won't be more than 80%, as opposed to us 35%.
Yeah, I have a friend who's a bit overweight, and I've tried talking to him about it, and it's a difficult subject, and I don't know how you change people's lifestyles or ways of thinking. So, unfortunately, it seems like an intractable problem to me, Aaron.
Okay. A bunch of great tweets lined up here. One that's breaking news right now. 6 minutes ago, Zelensky rules out talks after Vladimir Putin called for peace talks to end war. And he's not falling for that trap. Good for him. The next is New York to join California in banning gas vehicles by 2035, or I should say new gas vehicles. You will not be able to sell a new gas vehicle in New York or California after 2035.
I think it's a gas-only vehicle. I'm not sure if hybrids are excluded.
And
I would say too little, too late.
yeah, still 12 years away. Yeah. Elon Musk.
I have a feeling that deadline gets pushed out, particularly in New York, because there's a much greater political divide with upstate New York, and I just can't see upstate New York being told they can't buy gas powered vehicles. I mean, there's going to be a tremendous uproar there.
It is. As far as I understand, it is about gas-only vehicles. So, to be honest, it means nothing because you only have to put,
Right.
a normal gas car has a starter motor and a battery, and in a pinch, in an old car, if you needed to get off a train line, you're stuck on a train line. You put it in gear, turn the starter motor. So even the oldest cars have some form of electrical assist called a starter motor. You only have to put the smallest. I don't know what the regulations exactly say, and you need to look at them. But in the most cynical way of looking at it, you only have to put the smallest electrical motor in and the smallest battery for it to be considered a hybrid. So
Yeah, I don't think the laws are going to be written in to allow like that kind of way around it. I think the intent is that you will have only EVs or only hybrids, and the issue is going to be the cost of those vehicles unless they
They
dramatically come
will
by
they will
then.
drop dramatically. The
Yeah.
thing is that the energetics of it are just the energetics of burning fossil fuel in a vehicle is just horrendous. You might as well burn the same dirty fuel in a petrol station and go in a power station and go through all the losses. It's still the whole EV is just so much more efficient. Plus, they're so much better to drive. I mean, I would not go back. I could choose any car I want, never go back. So, I mean, I think the price needs to drop that rapidly, as you say, which it is, and hopefully it continues to. Remember, in China, you can get electric cars for less than $10,000, I believe, BYD, etc. And then the other thing is that people in a city need a sensible way of charging because an electric car would suck and suck pretty hard if you couldn't charge overnight such that you start every day with a full battery. So if I lived in the middle of a city on the second floor or whatever nth floor of an apartment in New York, if I could not charge that overnight, then that would completely shift the economics for me. So I think for me, they're the two biggest pivotal things:
Tyler.
upfront cost and charging at home.
I may.
Tyler. Yeah, there was, hey there, the happy Friday. There's an interesting dovetail to what Ben was saying. Didn't mean to cut you off, Ben, but being from New York City and understanding the transit system of New York City and the number of people in New York City, it is also a bit of a challenge. It would probably be something, and Ken, you probably would think this way as well, that they might impose some heavy um, what's the word I'm looking for? A heavy entrance into the city if you are going to come in with a car. Do you know what I'm saying? Because, for example,
Congestion charging, like in London, for
yeah,
example. Yeah.
and actually, thank you, Ben. Because the thing is that if it's made affordable, and if you deter them from bringing the cars in, right, then you will start to see a little bit more of the congestion be lessened. What Netherlands does as well is that they actually stopped a lot of those vehicles. Like they literally put sort of links around the city where like certain cars after a certain year, oh, like if they're too old, they can't come into the city limits, like into the Amsterdam limits, or they'd be fined. They have to leave the car outside of the city limits, which is interesting because in some ways it makes people think twice about coming in. But I also believe, like I said about being in New York City, there has to be something to be made that the transit system is good, right? That it's easy to get around, like, BART in San Francisco or the trams in Norway. It's got to be something where the transportation system, the public transportation system, has to be good. Because if it's good, then people within the city may not, they might think twice in owning something. And then the sharing economy is super popular here. And I think the sharing economy is going to come to the major cities of the US when it comes to having a vehicle. Because if they could share that Tesla as opposed to own it, I think it would be very interesting to see that model in cities like New York, Chicago, Miami, Los Angeles, or maybe not Los Angeles, but like Seattle, Redmond, Denver. I mean, when you start to see it in the major 12 cities, that would be really interesting to see if they do some sort of a test like that. Because right now it's just, the only people that can afford EVs are people that have money.
So, Amy, they actually are already going to start. They already are going to start that.
Hot Mike, there's a child agreeing.
Yes, they're already going to start that. As soon as you come out in a Holland Tunnel and a Lincoln Tunnel, they're going to hit you drastically on the passes for that. That's the first one that's already in progress. But then the second gain effects from that is, guess what? The cost of anything you buy in New York, food, anything like that, is going to drastically go up because now, how about the increase in the cost of shipping from all the trucks and everything else? It's not like they're going to have electrical powered tractor trailers or drones delivering all this stuff or
Oh, wait, but think
apartment.
about that. You just said drone delivery. Didn't a really lovely Professor X mention that a while
I'm
ago?
just saying it's nice. I mean, it's nice, and I think
Drone
the
drone
drone
delivery is highly
deliveries are
efficient.
really work out in Florida now. Is because I've seen a
It's
couple of them.
highly Yeah, it's highly inefficient per ton per kilometer drone efficiency. You need to look at the energy of these things. A container ship is 100 times more energy efficient per ton per kilometer than a truck, chiefly because it weighs 100 times more, but also to do with how frontal area and volume scale. Drones are very inefficient, and I think they will remain very inefficient. An airliner is similar efficiency to an EV per mile per passenger. So which way you choose to travel, similar energy efficiency, but a drone helicopter based flight system, very inefficient. And transport is one of our greatest consumers of energy. So I don't think it might be logistically helpful. It's not energetically helpful to go churning the air up inefficiently with drones. Um, Another point would be in London, just FYI as a reference point, you have an inner congestion charge zone that all cars have to pay for. And then wider than that, you have a low emission and ultra low emission zones that you can go in, you charge based on emissions. So clearly EVs are free. That's just a second, just look at London's model might be of some help. The traffic there's not so bad as it used to be, or the pollution. I used to live there. When I go back, I'm surprised how it hasn't gone downhill as much as you might think in 20 years. And the third point, so point one is look at the energy efficiency of forms of travel. It can vary by 2 or 3 orders of magnitude. From ship to drone is probably 1,000 times more energy for a drone than a ship. Second would be look at London as a model. The third thing I would quickly say is don't forget the mass of your vehicle. We might have to take a little bit of a hit on safety. It's no good driving a Tesla at 2.2 tons or whatever on earth they weigh. I drive one, guilty as charged. When you could be driving a smart car and running that on petrol, because a smart car is more efficient than a Tesla. It's just so light. It's just so light. And then if you can ride an e-bike or a bicycle, then that's even more efficient again. Walking is generally more efficient, obviously, but
Ben.
it depends on the embedded ratio of energy in the food. If the ratio of energy used to create food is more than 7 times the energy you get from the food, then it's better not to walk and to drive slowly, or to use a
Ben, but
bicycle or
then,
an e-bike. So,
Ben, what would you say then about the crazy bicycles that are coming out that are going really fast? What about
one of the
those?
most efficient ways to travel.
Because those fat bikes are pretty. There's like 3 different types of e-bikes
Well,
that are
yeah, the
floating around.
fat ones with the fat tires are less efficient, but in general, an e-bike is one of the most efficient ways a human has worked out how to travel. Because as I say, walking is not for free. You have to eat food. It's good for you, but you have to eat the food, and food has an embedded energy of at least 6 times the energy that it gives you. And at about 6 or 7 to 1 is about the threshold at which walking becomes less efficient than an electric mode of transport. The chief ways to use less energy are to be very big, because if you are a massive truck, if we made trucks that were 40,000 tons like ships, they would also be extremely efficient. As a lucky side effect, they'd also go very slowly, which is the other major factor. So the two things to make something highly efficient when you move it through air or water is make it really, really big, because as its volume goes up, its frontal area goes up slower. So you have to push less stuff out the way for the amount you're carrying. So even though a massive ship pushes a lot of water out the way, the amount it carries is disproportionately high because it scales to the cube, not the square of its characteristic length. The other thing you can do to be efficient as a lucky side effect is they don't drive container ships around at 60 knots, they drive them around at 6 knots. And that alone makes 100-fold difference because resistance goes up to the square. So if you go 10 times slower, you use 100 times less energy. So ships cool, massive 4,000-ton trucks, if the roads could handle it. 40,000-ton trucks would be cool, but we don't make them. Trains are cool for the same reason. So just worth thinking about. We need to just think about the energy. A great book to read would be, it's free online, available as a PDF, withouthotair.com, by the late David McKay, who's dead in Cambridge, unfortunately, otherwise I'd get him in my rooms. But it talks about all of this just through the numbers. No moral judgments. We can make the moral judgments and everything built on top of correct arithmetic, but let's get the arithmetic right. And
So the,
withouthotair.com does that.
it's just that you could make the arithmetic kilowatt per kilometer per kilogram.
Nearly
So,
kilowatt hours per kilometer
yes,
per kilogram. Yes, exactly what you do. Yes, and I've got all those figures in front of me. I was reading that. I read that book out live every day because it's so well researched. You cannot argue with it because he comes from
no,
first principles.
it's a
Uh,
great way to
yeah.
think of it. Yeah,
Yes. Exactly. And it is pretty fascinating. And I said it's available. I'm reading the book as like an audiobook on Clubhouse just because it's so good. If I was to have written a book on this and researched it, if I had the patience, it would be exactly this book. So it's kind of poetic that the guy from Cambridge, where I am, has died, which I
yeah,
haven't yet, and
yeah.
and yeah, and has made this amazingly grounded book with no agenda going into it, just the numbers. And there are some surprising results. Some technologies suck pretty hard that you might think would work, and some technologies that you think wouldn't work actually work pretty well. And it varies from country to country. But the thing is to arm ourselves with the knowledge about what can and cannot work for us and for our countries, and then have the political and moral discussions on top of numbers that can or cannot actually work.
Yeah, you can't beat shipping. Um,
I thought you were going to say you can't beat nature, but yeah, or physics. But yeah, you can't. Nature remains undefeated. Yeah.
yeah. Um, Elon Musk set to unveil the Optimus humanoid robot on Tesla Day. Tesla AI Day, which is today, if I understand correctly. The Optimus robot will be the star of Tesla AI Day, but Musk is also expected to discuss Tesla's long-delayed self-driving technology. Next up, Thomas Tong found one. Harvard scientists find first definitive proof of the rise of oceans. They've discovered the phenomena essential to anticipating the effects of climate change exist. The studies, the first indisputable evidence of sea level rise due to climate change. And honestly, the last one that I
It's all a conspiracy, Tyler. They're just trying to control us.
have, half human looking robot breaks speed record. A robot built by a company called Agility Robotics set the Guinness World Record for the fastest 100-meter run by a bipedal robot. And here come the robotic games, and inevitably they'll beat the humans. And there you go. That's what I got for the tweets. Did anyone have a tweet? Oh no, one last one from Saudamini. India porn ban. The Indian government blocks 63 more porn websites as the government cracks down on more pornographic websites. Over 60 additional sites have now been banned in India. That article made me remember the early days of building a human-powered search engine with Jason, and we could see the search logs of what people were searching for. And oh my sweet God, was it horrific to see the number of porn terms that people were searching for, and particularly from India. It was unbelievable. I'm still shuddered at the volume of the percentage of searches that are porn related, particularly from India. It was very strange. It was very, very strange and very, very disturbing. So I imagine that I'm just imagining what India's, now that India knows, I'm just imagining the meetings that the Indian government has had with Google about what Indians are searching for. And when Google handed over the reports of what Indians are searching for, and then India realized, oh boy, Houston, we have a problem. Anywho, so we'll end on that cheerful note. So I'll hand it back over to anybody who's, if Ben, are you opening a room today?
Yeah, in about 45 minutes, we're going to talk about ventilation, because there's been a lot of talk about sealing up doors and windows and stuff to keep yourself warm this winter. But yeah, we're going to have a discussion on how you can still breathe when you do that healthily.
Okay.
Yeah. Indoor air is notoriously really, really polluted. Most people don't realize. So getting just some fresh draft in the morning, for example, can help quite a lot in regions that don't have filtering.
All right.